Life can be unpredictable, especially when the past collides with the present in the most unexpected of ways. In today's story, a woman named Olivia, once heartbroken and overlooked by her ambitious ex, Chris, finds herself facing him years later at the height of her own success. What follows is a journey of resilience, self-discovery, and the power of standing on your own 2 feet, no matter the challenges life throws your way. Join us as we delve into a tale of personal growth, ambition, and the lessons learned along the way. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel to start today's story. I had always imagined the moment I'd finally see him again, but never in a setting like this. I had come to Maison de Luxe, one of the finest Michelin star restaurants in the city, with a singular purpose: to enjoy a quiet business dinner. My company, Savor by Olivia, had just reached an exciting milestone, and after a long afternoon of meetings, I felt it was time to celebrate. I had brought my team's hard work to fruition, and I needed this moment to appreciate the success that was all my own. But then, as I followed the maitre d' to my table, I heard a voice, one that stopped me in my tracks. Well, Olivia Parker, this isn't really your scene, is it? The words hit me like a jolt of electricity, and I turned instinctively, the familiar tone cutting through the air like a blade. There he was, Chris Reynolds, seated at a corner table with a glass of Bordeaux in hand. Lounging with that same cocky smirk I remembered so well. The woman across from him was no doubt decades older than him, her jewelry glistening like the finest diamonds and her designer clothes perfectly tailored. It was a picture of sophistication, one I would have once envied. "Chris," I said, managing to keep my voice steady despite the sudden flutter of anxiety in my chest. What a surprise. His eyes skimmed over me, a flicker of judgment in his gaze. "I bet," he replied, his eyes never leaving me as if trying to assess whether I had changed or not. "Don't worry, the waiters here are used to explaining the menu to newcomers, though I doubt you'll appreciate the culinary artistry. Remember how you used to think Olive Garden was fancy Italian?" My stomach tightened. He hadn't changed. The same dismissive tone, the same arrogance that had once shattered my heart, was still there. And then, there was Vivian, the woman beside him. She shifted uncomfortably in her seat, and I saw a flicker of unease in her expression. She must have been aware of Chris's rudeness, but she said nothing, only offering me a polite smile as Chris spoke again. "Just catching up with an old friend," he said, patting Vivian's hand dismissively. "Olivia and I go way back. We dated in college before I upgraded my standards." The words stung, more than I expected. It wasn't just his cruelty that hurt, but the reminder of who I once was. A girl who believed in the potential of a relationship that had ultimately crumbled under the weight of Chris's ambition and my own insecurities. Olivia Parker, 30 years old. I thought to myself, taking a deep breath, and until this moment, I had been looking forward to a quiet evening. I didn't expect to run into Chris, especially not under these circumstances. His sudden appearance brought back all the painful memories, all the doubts that I thought I had buried deep within me. 7 years ago, he had left me for a woman who could open doors to the very world he had always craved. A world of connections, opportunities, and wealth. I had always been the girl who struggled to fit in, who was told that my dreams of culinary success were nothing more than a pipe dream. But that was then. This was now. The maitre d' interrupted my thoughts, gently ushering me to my table. "Your table is ready, Miss Parker," he said with a soft smile. I nodded, but Chris was quick to make another remark, his voice laced with condescension. "You're dining alone?" Bold choice for someone who used to be too intimidated to order coffee without me there to help. I couldn't help but feel the weight of his words. The sting of being reduced to the girl I once was. The girl who clung to Chris, believing that without him, she'd never be able to succeed. The girl who thought she couldn't make it in the world without the validation of someone like him. But I wasn't that girl anymore. "I'm here to celebrate the success of my business, Chris," I said, my voice steady, more confident than I had ever been. "Something I built on my own. No need for anyone to hold my hand." He didn't reply, his gaze shifting to Vivian, who looked a little uncomfortable, as if she wasn't sure how to handle the tension. But I didn't care. The years had given me perspective, and I no longer needed his approval. As I sat at my table, I felt a strange mixture of emotions, resentment, regret, and even a small flicker of triumph. Yes, he had hurt me, but I had grown stronger because of it. I had built something from nothing, something that was now thriving. And yet, even as I told myself this, there was a nagging voice in the back of my mind, reminding me that seeing Chris again had stirred up more than just old memories. It had stirred up doubts, and I had to fight to push them away. Chris Reynolds had been my past, but I was now my own future. I wouldn't let him dictate my story any longer. Little did I know, this unexpected encounter was just the beginning of a much larger confrontation, one that would test my resolve and force me to confront not only Chris, but the very foundations of the life I had worked so hard to build. After that encounter at Maison de Luxe, I thought I had seen the last of Chris Reynolds. I was wrong. The next few days went by in a blur of meetings and emails. The excitement of my recent success slowly overshadowed by a sense of unease that I couldn't shake. That unease turned into something much more tangible when I received an email from Chris. With the subject line, "Congratulations, potential collaboration." I stared at the email for a moment, the words on the screen mocking me. Despite everything that had happened, there was something in his message that sounded professional, friendly even. Chris explained that he was now the executive chef at a high-end bistro in Manhattan, owned by Vivian's company. He proposed carrying my products, Savor by Olivia's sauces and spices, in their retail section. He even said it would be great to reconnect after all this time. I was torn. Part of me wanted to ignore it. Another part of me wanted to see if there was some genuine interest in working together. Despite our history, my team and I had worked so hard to get to this point. Perhaps this was the opportunity we needed to break into a new market. So, against my better judgment, I agreed to meet with him during my next trip to New York. When I stepped into the bistro, it was everything I expected: elegant, polished, without a trace of pretense. Chris stood in his chef whites, commanding the kitchen like a general directing his troops. For a moment, I felt a pang of nostalgia, remembering how ambitious he had been when we were together. He had always believed in the power of connections, the importance of being seen in the right places. It had been one of the reasons we had clashed so much. I never cared for the superficiality of it all. But I had to admit, he had certainly built something for himself. We sat down for lunch, and Chris started reminiscing about the old days. His stories were edited, of course, rewritten in a way that made him the hero of our shared history. I didn't let on that I could see through it. I had learned by now to pick my battles. And this wasn't one worth fighting. "You always had potential," he said, casually, as if our breakup had never happened, as if it had just been a minor detour on the road to success. Sometimes people need space to grow in different directions. I nodded, though his words stung. We had both grown, but not in the ways he thought. He continued, suggesting that my products could help elevate the menu, but in a way that felt more like a backhanded compliment than an honest proposition. By the end of lunch, Chris proposed an exclusive partnership. His bistro would carry my products for 1 year, with the potential for expansion if sales were strong. It was the kind of deal I had dreamed about. But there was something in the way he spoke that made me uneasy. His attitude was dismissive, as if my products were merely an accessory to his genius. I asked, casually, "Will Vivian be involved in this decision?" I had heard rumors that their relationship had shifted, that Vivian no longer supported his culinary endeavors in the same way. Chris stiffened, but quickly covered it up. "Oh, Vivian and I? We've transitioned to a purely professional relationship," he said, but there was something in his voice that made me question the sincerity of his words. At that moment, I knew something was wrong, but I still didn't trust my instincts enough to walk away. I had worked too hard to get here, and this might be the break I needed. I agreed to the terms, but something deep inside me felt the familiar tug of doubt. The following weeks were filled with negotiations. The partnership was finalized, and for a brief moment, I allowed myself to be optimistic. The exposure was huge, and the product order was large enough to significantly boost our production capacity. It was the kind of deal I had dreamed about. But as the launch approached, I began to notice cracks in the facade of Chris's professionalism. Just 3 days before the big launch, I received a terse email from him. Need to postpone the partnership indefinitely. Unforeseen circumstances. We'll be in touch. I was stunned. I tried calling him, but he didn't answer. I reached out to his sous chef, who reluctantly told me that Chris had left the bistro abruptly, accepting a new position at an upscale resort in Aspen. He had been hired by another wealthy older woman, someone who had been impressed by his charm and culinary skills. I felt the ground beneath me collapse. The investment in production, the employees I had hired, the plans we had made, all of it was now in jeopardy. And when I finally reached Chris, his response was cold, almost mocking. Business opportunities change, he said. You should know that better than anyone. Maybe this is a sign you should stick to your little blog and meal kits. Not everyone is cut out for the big leagues. The callousness of his words sent a shockwave through me. But even more than the hurt, there was the fear. My company, my dreams, everything was at risk. I couldn't afford to fail now. But I also couldn't afford to let Chris's betrayal take me down. So, I did what I had always done. I fought. I threw myself into finding new distribution channels, reaching out to every connection I had. It wasn't easy, but I was determined to find a way. I knew I couldn't let this setback define me. It wasn't over yet, not by a long shot. The next few weeks felt like a blur. My company, which had been soaring just a month earlier, was now facing a crisis. The abrupt cancellation of the partnership with Chris had left us in a precarious situation. I had just expanded our production capacity and hired new staff, all based on the deal we had secured with the bistro. The financial strain was overwhelming. But as I sat in my office, surrounded by invoices I couldn't afford to pay, a spark of determination flared up inside me. I refused to let this setback define me. I had come too far to let one man's selfishness destroy what I had built. I reached out to every contact I had in the industry. Some were sympathetic but unhelpful. Others ignored my calls. But then, just when I thought all hope was lost, I got a call that changed everything. Maya Jensen, a former blog subscriber who had followed my journey from the very beginning, was now working in product development for Whole Harvest, a national grocery chain known for its commitment to artisanal brands. I've been following your company since the blog days, Maya said. Send me samples of everything you've got, including the bistro line. I think there's a fit with our premium stores. It was a lifeline. The timing couldn't have been more perfect. Whole Harvest was known for working with brands that had a story to tell. And my story was one of resilience. Despite the industry's skepticism about my lack of formal culinary training, my products had gained a loyal following. But as grateful as I was for Maya's help, the reality was that getting into a national chain like Whole Harvest wouldn't happen overnight. It would take months to onboard new vendors. And I didn't have that kind of time. In desperation, I turned to my team, confessing the full extent of the crisis we were in. I failed you, I admitted during our emergency meeting. I let a personal connection cloud my business judgment. And now our company is at risk. What happened next surprised me. Instead of anger, my team rallied around me, offering ideas for cost-cutting measures and alternative revenue streams. Clara, our marketing manager, suggested we launch a direct-to-consumer campaign, leveraging my personal story, including Chris's betrayal. People connect with authenticity, she said. We can use this to fuel a Save Nourish campaign. It'll generate immediate cash flow while we work on securing long-term distribution. It felt uncomfortable, vulnerable, even, but it was my only option. So, we launched a heartfelt video explaining our situation, offering special bundles of our products with significant pre-order discounts. The response was overwhelming. Loyal customers, blog followers, and cancer support groups mobilized to support us. The campaign was a success, buying us some breathing room. As we scrambled to fulfill orders, Maya called with unexpected news. Whole Harvest had agreed to fast-track our products for their holiday showcase, featuring us in 30 premium locations. It wasn't a complete solution, but combined with the direct sales, it would keep us afloat. For the first time in weeks, I allowed myself to breathe. But just as things seemed to be looking up, I received an email from an unfamiliar address. Vivian Hargrove, CEO of Hargrove Hospitality Group. Miss Parker, I recently sampled your fire-roasted tomato sauce at a colleague's home and was impressed by both the product and your company's origin story. Hargrove Hospitality is expanding our boutique hotel restaurants to feature more artisanal products with meaningful narratives. I believe your line would be an excellent fit for our Chicago location's new concept. The name sounded vaguely familiar, but I couldn't place it. A quick Google search revealed that Vivian Hargrove was a respected figure in luxury hospitality with a portfolio of high-end hotels and restaurants across the Midwest. This could be the game-changing opportunity we needed. I met Vivian the following Wednesday at her office, and the meeting went exceptionally well. She proposed featuring my complete product line at the Artisan, her flagship hotel restaurant in Chicago, with potential expansion to all Hargrove properties if the initial launch was successful. Just when I thought things were falling into place, Vivian casually mentioned something that took my breath away. My new executive chef is Ethan Reynolds, she said with a slight smile. I understand you're acquainted from culinary school. I froze. Ethan, the man who had walked out of my life 7 years ago, had somehow worked his way into this new partnership. The irony was almost too much to bear. I kept my composure, though my mind raced. Could I really work with him again? Could I put the past behind me for the sake of my company? Vivian seemed to sense my hesitation. Is that a problem? She asked, studying me intently. I hesitated before answering, weighing the opportunity against the potential for disaster. I had no choice. I needed this partnership, and I was determined to prove that, no matter who was standing in my way, I would succeed on my own terms. Yes, I finally said, it's not a problem. But as I left the meeting, I knew this was going to be more complicated than I could have imagined. As the days leading up to the relaunch of the Artisan drew nearer, the tension between Ethan and me grew palpable. We were both operating in the same space again, but I wasn't the same woman who had once relied on him for validation. I had learned to stand on my own, to trust in my abilities and to never let the past define my future. Ethan, on the other hand, seemed to be trapped in the cycle of ambition and ego, always looking for the next opportunity to climb higher, no matter the cost. When the big day arrived, I found myself standing at the forefront of the Artisan's transformation. I had put everything I had into this project, working late nights, refining the menu, and making sure every dish reflected my vision. But it wasn't just the food, it was about the story behind each ingredient, the heart and soul of the restaurant, and the authenticity that had always been at the core of my business. Ethan, ever the perfectionist, had tried to assert his authority, but it was clear to everyone that this was my moment. As the doors to the Artisan opened, the critics arrived, and the world watched. The reviews were glowing, the public embraced the new concept, and the Artisan's success was undeniable. I had done it. I had taken something broken and turned it into a shining example of what hard work, passion, and perseverance could achieve. That evening, I sat in a corner of the restaurant with Gabriel, my husband, watching as industry leaders came by to congratulate us. And then, from across the room, I saw Ethan, still trying to find his place in the world, still chasing the next big thing. But for me, I had already won. I had built my empire on my own terms. If there was one thing I had learned from all of this, it was that success isn't about relying on others. It's about trusting yourself and having the courage to create your own path. Thank you for reading, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more life stories.